person this fall at the Public Theater, or winter at the Public Theater, and you can read his bio for all the other productions that he is part of or has been part of as a performer, director, and a choreographer. So without further ado, Andy, would like to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the only person dancing today, right? Is anybody going to jump in? Oh, excellent, excellent, excellent. Good. So I'll start talking, and then as we go, I'll demonstrate some things, and then I'll teach some things. Today is not about, as I will say with educators and directors and choreographers, it's not about executing things perfectly, it's about grabbing as many concepts as you can. I'm going to say a thousand things. So just grab what you can. I sort of know where I'm going to go in this lecture, in this conversation, and we'll see where it branches off to. So let me start it by saying a couple of different things about musical theater. So we're all in the form of musical theater, right? So educators, directors, choreographers, in the pushing forward of stories on stage. So having said that, you know, I preface all this by saying a couple of different things. Choreography is a lot of different things. I was very fortunate to be in really wonderful Broadway productions as a performer, and was content. I was very happy with it. But then I wasn't happy with it, and I decided to sort of put my money where my mouth was a little bit, and say, you know what, let me see if I have a voice that pushes things forward. I felt that dance could be more integral in story development. So having said that, maybe there's a lot of different ways that that can happen. I'm going to talk about two different ways. One way is literally through physical vocabulary. Physical vocabulary that tells a story. And in that way, it's what, today I'm going to speak selfishly. I'm going to speak about my point of view. I feel like in the business, we should borrow and take and learn from so many other people, but at some point in time you have to trust your own instincts. You have to go into your groove and say, if I'm going to fly, it's because I leaned into it. And even if you're on a sinking ship of a show, if you have a vision, they follow you and everyone has a good time, and they walk away from it feeling like they've created something. If there is no vision in a faulty, flawed, or successful piece, it's just discontentment from every person. From the choreographer, from the director, from the composer, from the cast. We must take care of our cast because they're our words. They are the gestures. So, physical vocabulary. Physical vocabulary, say I'm in a swing musical. I can take a step like, and right away my vocabulary is going to say something because it's borrowed from something that actually happened. Through the years, musical styles change, fashions change, politics change, the social climate change, and it affects everything that we are, everything that we dress. And so that the music changes with the social climate, the dance follows. So like, for example, in swing period, there's so much angst, there's so much unrest. And so it came out in youthful music, like hip-hop, because there was something to say and they didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to process it. So the low rumbling drum tells you how all those young people felt. The trumpets tell you what they want to do. They attack. Does that sort of make sense? So right away the dance form went. So right there, I'm an 18-year-old, war, everything's messed up. That's how I feel. So that's how I'm going to start my dance. Right away, this is a caricature of the social climate if I'm choreographing to something like swing music I was just playing. So that's what I mean by physical storytelling. Physical storytelling where here's the two things now, where I am the narrative. We know that I'm going to talk a lot about orchestration today. We know that this is what happens in orchestration. A very wise, smart, advanced person made a melody line. And hopefully our melody line tells the lyric story without lyric of our character's journey. Then another very smart person takes the melody and divides it into 15 people in an orchestra, or however many people it is. That's 15 people saying the same thing in different ways. We're going to talk a lot about that, because that's what my life is all about. That's what I love in my career, is dissecting orchestration. And so, we're going to talk about that. But let's go back to our narrative melody line. Our stories must have a narrative line that makes sense, and that is, in the end, emotionally driven. Like we always say, everything in our musical, our scenes, our song, our dance breaks, you should all be able to sum it up in 1 or 2 sentences. Does that make sense? Like, what is Gypsy about? The desire to be noticed. Every character, Tulsa, Baby June, Louise, the Coreens, the discontent stage manager who's mopping the floor, every person, Herbie, every person in that show has the same need to be noticed. That, as you all know, is inherently emotional. It's not a show about, on Tuesdays I like to drink coffee. That could apply to everybody, but that's not inherently emotional, so why should I pay $150 to go see that show? And it's not going to change my life or my children's lives. Does that sort of make sense? So that narrative through line sometimes is told by one person. One person encompasses the melody. Example, something's coming. Tony stands on the stage. He is everything about that narrative through line. It is inherently emotional. He's a 17, 18-year-old kid who desires big things. I'm going to dance with that in a second, acting like Tony. Does that make sense? But sometimes, occasionally, the dance takes the narrative line. Very occasionally. A ballet on Town, Contact, In the Heights. I don't know if anybody saw In the Heights. One of my favorite moments in the Heights is when we were stuck on stage and we didn't know how to go from one scene shift to the other. And Usnavi was about to break up with Vanessa. And everyone's life was falling apart. So my favorite moment in the entire show is a transition where three couples walk arm in arm. And then one person goes like this, and the other person keeps walking, and then everybody just keeps walking. And all of a sudden, everyone is alone. So three couples started together, and then in one special light cue, and lighting is our friend, the one person moves away. This body language, it's not my person walks away from me and I do this. That's what I was saying before. My body language tells you how important that person was to me. Then I start walking again. And you know what I was thinking. So sometimes our narrative line comes through physicality. Most of the time in the musical theater, our narrative line comes from the vocalist. And our vocalist does not usually dance. And so then the choreographer's job, which is most of the time, is how to frame the vocal in a way that pushes the narrative line forward. And that's also what I think is very exciting, and that is when we need the orchestration. Because the orchestration will tell you every time what to choreograph. In that champagne, and I call that champagne transition in the Heights, it's this mellow sort of chill thing, and then the keyboard goes way up high. What does that sound like? To me, that sounds like thought. I'm a complicated person. My brain is always multitasking and thinking 1,000 things at once. So if my girl of a long time walked away from me, I would feel it here and I would feel it here at the same time. That's thought. And what am I thinking about? My core. You know that I'm thinking about here. That sort of makes sense? And so now the choreographer's very difficult job, and I do not hit it every time, I actually fail most of the time, is figuring out how to frame the narrative vocal line. Sort of making sense so far? Okay, so now, let's talk about impressionistic painting. Because impressionistic painting is, to me, the secret of it. An orchestration, if you close your eyes, I got hurt in the mid-90s, and I couldn't dance for about 18 months. And I was at the height of my performing career. So all I wanted to do was dance. So I couldn't dance. So I was on the treadmill, I was on the exercise basketball, I was in yoga class. I did everything, but not what I wanted to be doing. So it was during that time that I saw The Matrix, as I say. Because in my little cassette tape, iPod, Walkman, whatever it's called, Sammy Davis Jr. and Ella Fitzgerald all day long, every day. I don't know why. I went straight to the 40s, 50s, and listened to brass-driven, percussion-driven, rhythmically driven music. And all of a sudden, it was like the movie Fantasia. Everything started turning into colors. The trumpet was one color. The trumpet with a mute was another color. The snare drum was one color. The brush was another color. And all of a sudden, the music became an impressionistic painting. Now, what happens in Impressionism, I'm sure we're going to know this, is the author, the artist, forces us to look at one thing in an impressionistic painting. All focus is driven because everything else is out of focus. And Manet, there's this great Manet quote where he said, I force the audience not only to look at what I want them to look at, but feel about that thing the way I want them to feel about it. He manipulates their emotion so that you are looking at a focal point of the painting, but your heart has decided, your intellect has decided how you feel about it. Perfect example is this Renoir painting. You know what it is. All these top-hatted people are are waltzing around, and the girl is standing behind the bar serving glasses of champagne. You know the painting I'm talking about? Google it tonight, or right now if you have internet. And first person gets brownie prize. If you have internet, you Google a picture. And so you look at her, everybody else in the room, everything's shining, crystals in the chandelier, crystals in the glasses, everybody's top-hatted, gorgeous clothes, everybody is having a wonderful time, their chins are turned up even though you can't see their faces, and she's staring straight forward, so lonely in an environment where everyone else is having a joyous time. But that's the only thing that's in the focal point. That's like a perfect example of what I try to accomplish in the dance numbers, is choosing when to force the audience to look at something, and then warping the outside groups, the staging, to be the tone. Now, In the Heights opened it all up for me. And In the Heights has been great, and it's been bad for me, because I learned it In the Heights. When we started working on In the Heights, I realized it was a piece of film. The show was filming it to me. And the only way I was able to choreograph it was to envision it all the time as a film. So what do we do on film? We go close up, and we change speeds. And so I decided throughout the entire show I was going to go close up, and I was going to change the speeds. And so how do you go close up? Okay, I'm going to step away for just a second. So